How's it going, everybody? Nicky D here, coming at you live, man, yet again. So today, another dating video where I just want to read a couple posts on Reddit. So it's actually, I'm doing two in one. So it's going to be two videos because why not milk it? But two posts I'm reading back to back. And I want to talk about what's going on and just kind of react to a couple things that I thought were a little crazy. So the first one, it was, I blocked her after this. It was just like, that was the note from OP. It was just on one of the subreddits, one of the dating subreddits, and that just came up. And I just thought it was interesting when I first read it because it's clearly not. It wasn't a good conversation, but we will read it and I'll give some quick feedback on what it is. And sorry, my voice is a little it might be a little hoarse. Had a little bit of a cold. So yeah. So again, this person blocked. I don't know what app this is from or anything. So anyway, so we're into a conversation. I believe this is from the male perspective, if I've read the post correctly. So that would be the colored text, like the, I don't really know what color you would call that, but kind of like a reddish brown. And then the other one will be from the woman. So to start the conversation, from where we see it anyway, is yes, I think I've grown a lot as a person. Of course, I'm not nowhere near perfect, but I'm not trying to be. But he goes, no one is, but hey, it's good that you're trying. And then I don't see like a time. It just like 10:06 p.m. and then 7 p.m. the next, whenever that is. I don't know. Like it doesn't say date. It says, and poof, you disappeared. Fantastic. And Buddy goes, I didn't disappear. I sent you a message that you didn't respond to. So there's only 2 pages to this. So we'll make the reaction fairly quick. So when you're texting online, I think like it's common courtesy to send a text message and then await to hear from the person. I think that's pretty fair. I know people will say a bunch of stuff, when you're in the early stages of texting and dating and whatever, there's metagaming to it. Don't respond too early because you don't want to look, you don't want to look too not like over interested. I can't think of the word right now, but you know what I mean. Don't respond too fast or don't double text. Certain things like that, people will come up as like meta things. And I think like it just really depends on the person. Some people like to text a lot and I don't like to text a lot. So if I didn't get a response for like 6 hours, it's not going to bug me. I would prefer that. So it just depends on the person. I don't think you can look too much into that. But in this situation, I think it's fair to say something to a person, and wait, and it was 10:06, right? Like 10:06 p.m. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to bed at like 10:30, right? That's usually when I try to lay down. So, yeah, like I wouldn't expect a response, right? If I got texted at 10:06 p.m., I might not respond because it's like, I want to lay down, I want to relax, and then I want to head to bed, right? And then I would hear from them in the morning, right? And I think that's fair. So, again, like in this situation, it wasn't a question. Now, if it was a question, I would 100%, there's no doubt in my mind. It's like, well, then you didn't respond. But in this one, I'm not saying that Buddy should have texted again. I actually think it's fair to say if you send a response, if you say something, you would wait a response. In a conversation, that's what you would do in a real life conversation. I would say something, I'd make a statement, whatever it is, and then I would expect a response. And no different than her saying something, I wouldn't just flat out ignore her, right? You would acknowledge, the statement, whatever it is. So I just think it's interesting. But her response is, I think, is just really childish. Just to say, and poof, you disappeared, fantastic, and then like the emoji. Because it sounded like she like was happy, that you didn't respond. It's like happy that there wasn't anything there. It's like if you don't want this conversation to go forward, you can just say that. You don't have to make a big deal out of something. You can simply just end it and just say, hey, listen, I'm not really feeling a connection. There's nothing wrong with just saying that, right? And I think more people need to learn that on both sides of this conversation. Continuing on to the second page, so there is a point at the bottom, but I can't really read it. It's kind of like cut off. Anyway, but needless to say, she goes, I also want initiative from a man. Couldn't send me a message at all the whole day, and I'm trying to compete about who sent the last message. And I'm trying to compete about who sent the last message. You could have easily said goodnight, though, too. But anyways, that's what it is, and it's okay. Have a good night. So he goes, instead of sending me a reply, you become argumentative. And she goes, I took initiative yesterday throughout the day. I would expect the same. And he just said goodbye. So just ended the conversation. I'm going to be honest. I think that's probably the better way to go about it. You don't have to keep going. Like, there are people who are just not going to be compatible, right? That is just, it's just how it is, right? I'm not going to be compatible with people and vice versa, right? A situation I bring up all the time, and I'll try not to make this video too long, but I'll bring up a little bit of a story, is I went on a date with a girl, and it didn't go. But one of the reasons why it didn't go is because she said I wasn't really texting her enough to show that interest, right? Now, I kind of thought I was, but I could see her point that I wasn't, very frequent. I'd be a couple times a day, right? Like, in the morning, a couple hours, and then, a couple hours, and it's not a lot, right? She wants someone, and we're early, right? We only had one date, so it was like, kind of, I want to hear from you, And, and she called it off. Now, I've actually hung out with her after as just friends, and it's perfectly fine. Like there's no issue, right? And I respected that. I was like, that's a fair opinion, And again, I made my stance clear, though, that I was like, I get that, but, I'm not a texter, right? I'm interested in you because I'm still talking to you, and I want to go on a, I was thinking about a second date or whatever. But in that situation, we didn't bog down in arguments or, whatever. It was just, hey, this is where it is. Okay, thanks. Thanks for letting me know. Appreciate it. And we just move forward. I think in situations like this where it's like it's starting to go down that like don't even respond of saying, hey, instead of sending me a response you became argumentative, just go, take care, right? And just end the conversation. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not losing anything, right? You're not out any sleep. I think she is there is a point where I would probably argue on the side of the woman in this case where it's like maybe she's got a point. But I just don't think so here. And then saying about the initiative, it's like, you could show that initiative. Now, if this had happened a couple times, right, where she had to send that second text to follow up, even though technically he did text her last, maybe I'd be a little bit more lenient to her position. But I just think like, I don't think she went about it completely wrong either. Like, I mean, the first response she had, let me clarify that actually. The first response she had where she said, and Poofy disappeared, that was really immature. But she did explain herself in the second page, and then she attempted to just end the conversation. She didn't, it did look like she was like, hey, have a good night, whatever. And Buddy was just like, okay, we're done. So I think it ended better than I expected. That's what I'm trying to say. I think it ended better than I expected. But again, if you text someone, I am of the belief, if you've texted someone and they haven't responded to you, I would just leave it personally. Because 99% of the time, like, you're being ghosted, right? You're being ignored, right? And it doesn't matter if it's man or woman doing that. It's like anybody who does that. Like, if I've texted you and just haven't responded, I'll do that all the time, but that'll be like friends. Like, I'll text them and they just won't really, like, we'll have a couple texts back and forth and we won't say anything. It's like, because that ends the conversation, right? But again, in dating, you're always trying to go forward. I don't know, but yeah, tell me you guys' thoughts. I try to look at both perspectives, but it's I find it hard in some of them because it's like, I think that was a pretty fair point, but he was like, no one was rude. I would say that. I don't think anyone was rude. But the next one I'll talk about might be a little more fascinating. So yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.